Welcome, YouTube. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. Normally we go through a 5-round league and play the matches out. But for those of you who don't know, I actually won the Magic Online Championships finals this past Sunday, and that actually qualified me for the next Pro Tour as well as a seat in the 8-player Mocs finals event. And we played this Green Devotion deck all the way to a first place finish. So, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually be going over the top 8 matches, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals. And basically, I ended up streaming the event live with a hand hider, and I know that I had a few requests to see how the games played out and things like that. So, and I think there were some pretty interesting spots in the games as well. So I think it'll be some pretty good insight as to how I approach mulliganing decisions and sequencing and things like that. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll see you guys back in just a little bit. All right, here we are back for the quarterfinals. Again, this is the Mocs finals event that I had played this past Sunday. Now, with this particular hand, we don't necessarily. I did not have any information on what my opponent was playing. A couple people in my Twitch chat said that they had some history playing with Boros Feather, so obviously they could have ended up playing a different deck. I ended up looking at all of the competitors' recent results, and this is one of the individuals who didn't have that many recent results, so I wasn't 100% sure what they were playing. But in any case, our hand's a keep no matter what. I'm not going to mulligan a hand like this in pretty much any matchup, and we're on the play, so. On the play, turn 1 elf, turn 2, our hand is great. So we're definitely going to keep this hand. I believe I think they kept 7. I can't remember. Yeah, they kept 7 as well. All right, so we'll get started here. Obviously, turn 1 elf. J.K. Powell with the Twitch Prime, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Thank you so much for the support. Constellation trigger today is at 1. Thank you very much, J.K. Powell. All right, so our opponent has a turn 1 favored Hoplite. Try not to go too fast here. All right, so we have a couple of options here. Our options include Burning. Well, we're definitely playing Burning Tree. It's just a question of do we want to play Haven Oath or do we want to play Jade Light Ranger? There are considerations for both. The nice thing about playing Haven Oath is it allows us to develop more mana to play this turn, and potentially, if we find a Nykthos, so let's say we go Haven Oath, we Oath into a Nykthos, next turn we can Burning Tree off of the Haven land, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 devotion. Then we'd have access to 6 mana. So I think just given that we just want the most explosive start possible, especially in a matchup like this, where they may or may not give you a lot of time here. Yeah, we definitely want to just put as much mana into play. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Haven, so the sequencing there is you want to tap the Elf in the Forest, cast the Burning Tree first to put the Haven on the land, so that way if, let's say, you hit Elf plus 2 other lands, you're forced to take the Elf, then you get to play the Elf because you have an extra mana floating. Ideally, we're looking for Nykthos, and lo and behold, we found the Nykthos, so that's pretty lucky. I think there was a Voracious Hydra and another Planeswalker. The issue with Hydra is we don't have another land, so we can only Hydra for 2, so that means if they put a single counter on this, the Hydra doesn't do anything next turn anyways without the Nykthos, so we definitely just want to take the Nykthos there. Alright, so they play a land, they're attacking, could be a bluff, very likely not a bluff, I just end up taking it, not worth calling here. If they have a spell, they're likely going to cast it anyways, like a Reckless Rage or something, which they did end up casting. And they played a Soul Scar as well. We drew Karn. Quite a good draw step. Certainly one of the better draw steps. So we have a couple of options here. So we're certainly playing our Nykthos. Let's get that out of the way. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this taps for 2, 6, or excuse me, 2, 4. We have access to 5 mana. So if we look at our wish board, any 1-drops we can get, not really much here. Cage, Needle, Crypt, none of those really do that much. Stonecoil doesn't block either of their creatures profitably. So Karn's not really an effective play here. So we're really deciding between Vivien and Jadelight. If we play Vivien, we can fight their Soulscar Mage, which isn't the worst line. Trying to think of what like we have to think about what is the worst case scenario for us. Like if we play a Jadelight Ranger here and don't do anything to interact with their board, maybe they could have another Reckless Rage. I feel like if they had another Reckless Rage, they probably would have cast it last turn instead of the Soulscar Mage to take us off Devotion because they knew we had the Nykthos off of the Oath. So I wouldn't expect them to have another Reckless Rage. So I think that what we want to do is actually just play Jadelight here to try and potentially find another Burning Tree. Even a Nissa would be quite good, because if we play Jadelight and we hit a Nissa on top, we're going to have 6 Devotion in play. So that would be tap this, tap the Nykthos for 6 mana, right? We have 1 floating. We could play Nissa, untap the Nykthos, activate it again, and have access to 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. We would access to 9 mana, which is Karn plus Sky Sovereign. So I think Jadelight gives us the best potential to have a good turn next turn. The problem with playing Vivien is we can't really protect it, because we don't want to chump block the Hoplite, right? Because we want the Devotion for Nykthos on our busted turn, the turn where we go off, quote unquote. So playing Vivien, I think if their hand is just any relevant spells, Vivien's pretty bad here, because they just get to pressure it, and then we don't untap with the Burning Tree. We have much less mana, so I think Jadelight sets us up for the most potential like busted draws next turn. So I'm gonna play Jadelight, and literal best possible. We flipped the second Nykthos in the first activation, and then had the Nissa on top. So it literally could not have gone any more perfect. I ended up attacking here. I know I'm not going to block anything next turn no matter what, so might as well attack. Because again, we just want to protect all of our Devotion. Alright, so they end up playing a land, Shock. And they end up casting, a Feather the Redeemed. Well, this turn is not going to go well for them. Let's say that. So, just to give you an idea of what we can do this turn, what we are going to do is we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Devotion, right? So we can tap this land for 2 mana, activate Nykthos for 6. We can cast Nissa with 1 green floating. We can tap the forest for an additional 2 green. We have 3 green floating. We can play a second Nykthos, use 2 of the green. Now our Devotion is 8, right? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So we have 1 floating plus the 8 from the second Nykthos is 9 mana. Then we can untap the Nykthos, -2 to use it again, down to 7 mana, plus another 9. So we have 16 mana this turn. So we have 16 mana, which means we can play Vivien down to 12, play Karn down to 8. We can Karn for Sky Sovereign, cast Sky Sovereign, deal 3 to this, crew the Sky Sovereign with the Jadelight, and then Vivien target the Sky Sovereign and kill the Feather. So after we say go, we're going to have all 3 Planeswalkers in play and a Sky Sovereign, and they're only going to have a Soulscar Mage. And I'll let the turn play out just so you can see exactly how it went down. Yeah, we got very lucky this game, I will say that. We flipped the second Nykthos and hit the Nissa. Could not have been any better. We actually get more mana too, because we get the extra Devotion off the Vivien. So I think it's 17, if I remember correctly. It's actually 18, because it's 14 minus the 4 for Vivien, so it's 18 mana. Alright, so we cast the Karn. Go ahead and get the boat. Go ahead and cast the boat. Kill the favorite hoplite. It is turn 4. Yes, it is turn 4. Why wouldn't we have 18 mana on turn 4? Alright, we'll crew the Sky Sovereign. We'll go ahead and kill the feather. And I did mess up here. I had 5 mana floating, and I should have cracked this Haven. There's no reason not to. I have more than enough mana anyways. And it actually could end up mattering because I would have an additional blocker to crew the Sky Sovereign, so that was definitely a mistake. Ultimately, one that I don't think would end up costing me because I'm just too far ahead anyways. They actually had the Haste Creature, so they actually did punish us pretty hard because now they had the Haste Creature to fight this, and they get to kill both of these Planeswalkers. But again, I mean, we still have Anissa and a boat. It's just, even though we made that slight error by not making this 2/2, I think they're just way too far behind to come back out of this. They only have 2 cards in their hand anyways. Yeah, so they kill our things. We end up drawing another Vivian anyways. Everything's good. I believe that's when our opponent conceded. Can't remember. Not quite yet. Oh, they did. Okay. That was game number 1. Let's go into game number 2. All right. Game number 2 on the draw. Alright, so this hand's even for being on the draw, this hand is quite good. We have a turn 1 elf, turn 2 Haven, turn 3 potential Hydra to fight something. Definitely not going to mulligan this hand. It's possible that Hydra might not be fast enough, but they didn't even have a 1-drop. They kept it. I'm kind of surprised with it. I was kind of surprised when they did this. They kept a hand. A 7-card hand that didn't have a 1-drop, and I was really surprised at, you know, what kind of hand they would keep that didn't have a 7-card hand that didn't have a 1-drop. And I kind of assumed my elf was getting slashed, but it also didn't get wild slashed. So their hand had no 1-drop and no wild slash. So we could play a 2/3 Hydra here, but given the fact that they didn't play anything on turn 1, their hand is likely all tricks anyways, so we're not going to block with our 2/3 Hydra, so we might as well just play a Haven and pass. You could maybe sell me on playing a 0/0 Hydra, or a 0/1 Hydra, excuse me, because we have the Nykthos, right? So you could potentially go tap Elf Forest, Haven the Forest, and then play a 0-power Hydra, which would then give us 4, 5, 6 mana next turn. But ultimately, I mean, there's not a huge difference between 6 and 5 next turn because it's not like there's really any 2-drops that we want to get with Karn. So the only difference would be an extra point on the Hydra, which ultimately I don't think is worth it. So I'm just going to go ahead and play the Haven and attack for 1. I'm not going to block with my elf, obviously. Yeah, there's some consideration to playing Hydra, but I ultimately don't think it's worth it. So we get Baffling ended. That's kind of annoying. Alright, so we have 2 options this turn. Well, essentially 3. There are 2 options are Hydra or Karn, and then what do we do with our Hydra? Karn, I think, is completely out of the question just because the best thing we can get is a boat. A Sky Sovereign, excuse me. And if we play Karn and minus for Sky Sovereign, and they just have, like, let's say they have 2 spells that target this, they make this a 4/4, and then Sky Sovereign just doesn't do anything. So I don't think playing Karn is very good here. So the question is, when we Hydra, do we want to fight this, or do we want to double up the Hydra? Again, we're pretty sure, like, I would say with 90% certainty that they at least have one mana trick in their hand. If we play Hydra and they have a trick, let's say a Defiant Strike, we just get destroyed because the fight is not a May. We are forced to fight if we end up choosing that mode. So I think it's just better to play a 4/5. And if we play a 4/5 and they attack, I'm snap blocking every single time. Right, I agree. Yes. 100% agree with that. They end up having a Feather, which is not great for us because they're going to hold up their protection spell again. And now we're in a spot where we're kind of screwed here. They could Reckless Rage with the double trigger on the stack, but if we make a 2/3, they could also just still Reckless Rage it. You know what I mean? So if they have Reckless Rage, we get owned no matter what mode we choose. So in the scenarios they don't have Reckless Rage, doubling is better, I think. Right, exactly. So this turn we have a couple things to think about here. We're going to play our Nykthos. So what we can do is we can Nissa, untap a land, but we can't really do anything after that. The other option, I mean, we could play a Hydra and try and fight the Legionnaire. Again, we expect them to have a trick, a 1-mana spell, so that's also not really the best line. They just have a God's Willing or something like that, or a Titan Strength or anything like that. So, honestly, none of our lines really look that good this turn. I can't really Karn for anything, because if we Karn minus, it's just going to die. And again, Sky Sovereign's not even good on this board. It doesn't kill the most important card, which is Feather, so... You spam real fast. Right, so, yeah, I mean, we really don't have that many good lines this turn. I believe, ultimately, what I ended up doing was just playing Nissa and kind of hoping that they didn't have, like, a Titan Strength or something like that. I can block this with my 3/3 land. Even if they have God's Willing, they can't give this protection because this is a colorless land, so they can't give this, like, pro-green and say attack Nissa, because we could still chump block and Nissa would take 3. So I think Nissa, if their hand is quote-unquote air, Nissa gives us the best chance to win if we untap with it. So I ended up going with that line. I'm not sure if it's right, but I think, like I said, I think Nissa gives us the best chance to win if they don't end up having anything. And the Hydra line is not that great. Karn is pretty slow and ultimately doesn't do anything to answer the most important card in play, so... Alright, they're going to second main phase of Defiant Strike, which means they get it back with the Feather on their end step, or on my end step, excuse me. I believe they did that on their upkeep as well. Yep, so they're going to upkeep God's Willing, which gives them 2 Scries. Yes, we lost this game. I believe we lost this turn. I think our opponent... If I remember correctly, I believe they killed us. Or put us in a spot where we had no outs. So they give the Legionnaire protection from green. They end up fighting that, which means now they have a free kill on the Nissa. And remember, they're getting all of these cards back on their end step. Can't block anything. They get an extra 3 cards back. And now they have a Feather with a protection spell and a 6/6 creature in play. And I don't have any outs. I think my only line was to double up on a Hydra and just Kind of hope they didn't see the line. Can't really Karn for anything. I can only Karn for needles, so. You should. Yeah, so we're gonna play a Hydra, double it up. Again, we know their hands, so we know it's not good enough. I'm gonna spare you the trouble. We're gonna go to game 3. We know we're dead on board, so it didn't matter what we did. All right, game number 3. Gets to be on the play, which is nice. And oh, I went too far. Our hand was great. 2 lands, Nykthos, 2 elves, 2 threats. Not gonna ask for much more in this matchup. And I believe so. They mulliganed to 5, and they did not play a 1-drop, so that's good for us. All right, they ended up cycling a Defiant Strike, which shows obviously a big sign of weakness from them. They played an Arcanist here. Yep, so they played a Dreadhorde Arcanist, which honestly, you know, could be potentially threatening. Like, they could play a Titan Strength and flash it back, and there'd be a potential 7-power attacker. But even if they have Titan Strength and then flash it back, the 7-power attacker attacking Nissa, we can just chump block with our land to keep our Nissa at 2. And then we get to untap with Nissa and Vivian and all that. So pretty easy, just slam the Nissa here. Attack for 3. Go ahead and pass the turn. See what they do. They immediately go to attacks. So that leads that... This play from them leads me to believe that they didn't have Titan Strength. Although it's not clear that they want a Titan Strength pre-combat, because maybe if their hand is bad enough, they want to just cycle with the Defiant Strike anyways. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that they don't have Titan Strength. So they like I said, their hand could just be, you know, pretty bad, and they just want to try and cycle through this. They're going to go ahead and attack and cast the Defiant Strike. I believe they attack Nissa, right? Let the spell resolve. Yeah, they're attacking Nissa. So we can... we're going to 100% block here. The tricks that they can have that I can think of are Boros Charm, the card that gives +1/+1 indestructible, which I don't remember the name of. Titan Strength, another Defiant Strike, all of which, you know, even if we lose our Forest, we still get to untap with 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 mana, plus a Nykthos. Even if we lose our Forest, I think we're still in a commanding position, so I'm just going to go ahead and take the block here. Also, it forces them to tap mana, which means they might not be able to cast another spell, etc., etc. Well, Magus, if they had Reckless Rage, they would have done it before blocks, right? They would have attacked, flashback the Defiant Strike, and then before blocks Reckless Rage. It was a 2/3. Sure, but there's no point. There's no difference in them doing it before blocks or after blocks. I know it is trample, but it ends up being the same thing either way. Yeah, I guess, sure. But I mean, even if that's the case, I still would rather just block. All right, so we have a decision to make here. What do we want to do with these Vivians? I think the easiest way for me to lose this game is to let them untap with a creature with mana up and a protection spell with potentially more cards in their hand. So I took a bit of a, I don't know if you'd call it an aggressive line or a defensive line, but I just went ahead and animated my land here, and then floated mana with Nykthos, played a Vivian, fought this, played a second Vivian, fought this. That might actually be... Like, it is possible that maybe I'm just supposed to kill this and let them untap with an Arcanist, but that could go bad if they have Titan Strength, Flashback, another Titan Strength. It's 7 power attacker. We block with a 3/3. You know, I feel like things could potentially go wrong if we do that. Asking the streamer to become a boat. Yeah. I feel like there's less ways that we can lose this game if we just say go with 2 Planeswalkers in play and a 3/3 and them having no permanence. You know what I mean? So I think it's much less likely we lose this game if we kill all their stuff. I don't understand why we still aren't a boat here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and kill all their stuff. Attack for 3. And they end up having quite a good follow-up. They have a Legionnaire and a Reckless Rage, so they kill our Forest and they kill our Vivian, which is certainly the best follow-up that they could possibly have. But they only have 2 cards in their hand, and now we're just kind of going wide. We end up drawing a Haven, so what we're going to do is just make a 3/3, attack for 5, and then make a 2/2. And again, we're just going wide. Just trying to get this game over with before they, before they get a Feather into play. Because once if they untap with a Feather in play, that's where things can go really south. We'll just try and end this game as quickly as possible. Alright, so we'll go ahead and attack for 5. They go to 6. They can't really attack Nissa because we probably just let the damage happen. So they end up baffling ending our land, and they pass. Because if they attack Nissa, we just let Nissa take it, then we untap a land and have lethal. Yeah, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. Play a Forest, animate a Nykthos, because hypothetically, Nykthos is a worse land than a Forest at this stage in the game. And just attack with everything. We weren't sure if they had if they have a Reckless Rage here, what they can do is they can block the Elvish Mystic and Reckless Rage the Nykthos. They would take 3 and go to 3. Then our board would still be Elf, Wolf, Nissa with a land and them at 3, which means if they don't have another blocker, we animate the land, they block the 3/3, and they still take 4 damage. So I think even if they have Reckless Rage, it's still fine for us. They ended up having nothing. They block the Wolf and go to 1. And now I just don't think they have any outs. Cycling into Defiant Strike. And that's it. That was the quarterfinals, and stay tuned, and we'll be back for the semifinals in just a bit. All right, YouTube, we're back here for the semifinals of the Mocs Top 8. I do know by I got the scouting report that our opponent this round is playing Winota. So, on the draw, feels bad, man. A little unfortunate that we lost the die roll. So, the thing about this matchup is there's not really much interaction. It's kind of just 2 ships passing in the night. So, this hand obviously looks a little bit suspect, but I know they're Winota, and I know that they don't have any removal spells game 1. They have no way to kill my land or elves. So, I know my elves are safe, and at least if I draw 2 lands, this hand has a turn 3 Karn for Cage, which I figured would probably be good enough, even on the draw. So I decided that I went ahead and kept this hand. I think it has a lot of potential, and this is one of the more important cards in the matchup, just because you need to try and get Cage down before they have a relevant battlefield. So I thought this hand was a pretty clear keep to me. And in a matchup like this, where they're not interacting with your elves, it's fine to keep a hand like this. And they didn't play a turn 1 elf, which I'm kind of surprised they kept a 7-card hand without an elf. Maybe they didn't know what I was playing, but it seemed unlikely. I still noticed chat. Don't worry, Mole, I got you. I'll never forget chat. Alright, so they have a Tithe Taker. I'm still kind of really surprised that they kept a 7-card hand without a 1-drop. The only thing that makes sense to me if them keeping a hand without a 1-drop is probably a turn 3 Rebel Master, turn 4 Winota, right? It's the only thing that would make sense. Like, any possible combination of of a 7-card hand, you have to have at least like a Rebel Master or a War Boss on 3 followed by a Winota. Because most other hands are probably not going to cut it, unless, again, it's possible my opponent didn't know what I was playing, but I was under the assumption that we knew what each other was playing. So, ideally I wanted to draw a land there, obviously, but we're going to go ahead and play 2 Elves. Sent by notice, yeah. Alright, so I hit this replay button. Maybe it'll eventually go to the next. There we go. Alright, so they shocked, so they pretty clearly have a War Boss here, which they do. They're going to attack with both their creatures. We're not going to block. We obviously need our lands. Alright, so we did draw a land. So, a couple options this turn. We can... So, remember, going back to turn 1, they kept a 7-card hand without a turn 1 elf, right? Now, what that says to me is I'm under the assumption they have Land Winota rolled up in their hand, right? Because I can't possibly think of... Again, outside of them not knowing what I'm playing. It seems very unlikely they would keep a 7-card hand without a 1-drop that didn't have a turn 4 Winota rolled up, right? So, obviously we could Karn for Cage. The problem with Karn for Cage is we might just not be able to beat the board. If we Karn for Cage, our Karn's at 3, we have a Cage in play, we don't get to play another elf this turn, so we don't even get to develop our mana. And then, what ends up happening is they just... Let's say they don't even have Winota, right? Let's just say they don't even play a land, they just attack with their creatures. They send the War Boss and a token at Karn, and they send a Tithe Taker and a 2/2 at us. We go to 13, they have 4 creatures. We don't have a Karn anymore, and now we have a Cage. So, I think that, while Karn for Cage looks like an appealing option, I really don't even think we beat the board if we Karn for Cage. So, ultimately, what I ended up doing was playing Hydra here for 2 and fighting the War Boss. And honestly, even in the worst-case scenario, where let's say they have Land Winota, they only get 1 trigger off the Goblin. If they don't hit a Marauders, we just get to eat the Goblin. Well, we get to eat the Goblin for free anyways with the Hydra. Let's say they do have the Marauders. We can just take 12, go to 5, right? We eat the Goblin. Then their board is Winota, Winota, Marauder, Tithe Taker. Then we would play Vivian, put 2 counters on the Hydra. We could chump block the Winota. The Hydra would trade for the Marauders. We would take 4 from the Tithe Taker and go to 1. And then I still think we're in a fine position at that point. So I think even in the worst case where they have Winota and hit Marauders, I think Hydra might still be a better play anyways. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And there's also a chance that they just don't have land or Winota, and if they don't play Winota this turn, I'm pretty sure the game is just over no matter what. They go ahead and play Pia, which we don't care too much about. They didn't play a land, which means maybe they had Winota and didn't have a land. We're going to go ahead and take our free block. You know, they got the 1/1, but I'm not gonna pass that up. Because they were going to be able to kill our Karn anyways if they had a land, right? Let's say we don't give them this Spirit. We play Karn, minus for Cage. They have Red Source, make this a 3-power, still get to kill our Karn. So, you know, you might as well just take that free block while you can. We do have to Karn for Cage this turn. Even though our Karn's going to die, it doesn't matter. It prevents them from going nuts next turn. We'll get our Cage, go ahead and cast it. And we're in a pretty good spot. I'd find it very hard to lose from this position. They play a Voice. They're going to go ahead and pump their Thopter. Attack our Karn for 3. 3/2 the Modern Prelim. I will say, chat, that was a very fortunate draw step. I will say that. I'm not going to lie. So we have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana. So what I think I ended up doing was just Jade Light plus Vivian. I think I put the counters on the elves. Hypothetically... Hey, Beats Arts, how's it going, man? Hypothetically, if my Vivian ends up dying, like... So let's say I play Jade Light Vivian. It's basically just a question of what do we want to put the counters on. So let's go ahead and cast the Jade Light to give ourselves the most information first before we decide where the counters need to go. Alright, Hydra on top, certainly keeping that. So we'll cast our Vivian. It's a question of where the counters want to go. We could make this a 4-5. I think it's better to just spread them around because we make these 2-2s, and the next turn we can make them 3-3s, which then, start making their blocks even worse, and just going a little bit wider. No need to attack here. The longer the game goes, the more favored we are. They can't remove this from the battlefield game 1, and we have a Hydra on top. This game's just over. Tron player, where are the mods? You'll love to see it. Alright, so game number 2 on the draw. Mono green, choose them. Always mono green. Alright. On the draw against Winota, this hand's obviously not going to cut it. We're going to mulligan this. Again, this is one of those hands where I'm going to keep this. We're on the draw. We kind of have to hope to get lucky on the draw anyways. We have to hope that either their draw fails or, we just have a busted sort of Nykthos draw. And if we draw Nykthos, this hand is quite insane. So I'm definitely going to keep this. I believe I ended up putting back the second Hydra, if I remember correctly. Which I think is right. Yes. Alright, so they have an elf. And they mulligan to 6 this game, so keep that in mind. We drew a land, which is good, because that means we can curve elf into Hydra, fight their elf. Also, it is the Nykthos. Alright, so they're playing a Tithe Taker and a land. We're obviously just going to go ahead and fight their elf. No reason to show them we have the Nykthos quite yet. Just going to play Emissary, Hydra, fight their elf. I see how you won this tournament now. Not going to say I wasn't whitelisted. Namas, does that mean everybody in the prelim is playing mono green? 6. Quick, we got to find the mirror tech. Alright, so they have an Instigator, and looks like they don't have a land. Should be pretty smooth sailing from here. Yeah, alright, so... In terms of sequencing, we want to go tap Elf, Forest. 2, 4, 5... Yeah, we could play the Haven first, but then we don't get to Vivian. So if we go tap Elf, Forest, activate Nykthos for 5, play Nissa, untap Nykthos, tap Forest, reactivate Nykthos, play Vivian, counter on these 2, I believe, and then just pass. Minotaurs has been called. I don't know if I agree with that, but alright, and pretty sure this game is just about locked up. They ended up stomping me and conceding because they didn't draw land and they see the writing on the wall. We could just minus and get Ulamog next turn, so yeah, I mean, game 1, we kept a pretty risky hand on the draw, but again, I feel like in this matchup, you kind of have to get a little bit lucky to win, especially on the draw, and then game 2, we pretty much did the same thing, and we got there both times, so we now are advancing to the finals, and I'll see you back in just a little bit. Alright, YouTube, we are back here for the finals of the Mocs Playoffs event. We know that our opponent's actually one of our good friends, so we know that they are on Lotus Field. They're in our testing group and our Facebook chat, so we know they were playing Lotus Field. Now, I will say that specifically in this matchup, the most important card it does happen to be in her hand. The most important card is Karn. A lot of your, notably, we're also on the draw, by the way. Hey, Killadrum, how you doing? Yes, Nicholas, we won the event. But yeah, so the most important card in this matchup is Karn. Now, the other most important part of this matchup is mana acceleration, because especially if you're on the draw, just waiting till casting a turn 4 Karn, not going to be good enough. 99% of the time, unless they mold a 5 and their hand is terrible, right? So this hand, while it does have a Karn, it doesn't have any mana acceleration. It doesn't even have a Nykthos. Like, there are situations where I would keep a hand without an elf. If, let's say, it had Emissary, Karn, Nykthos, I would consider keeping that hand. But as is, this hand is just not going to cut it on the draw, so we're going to go ahead and mulligan this hand. I believe, if I remember correctly, I think they mulliganed. It's not letting me show the game log. I'm pretty sure they mulliganed. Alright, so now that we're on 6, we can be a little bit more... We can keep a slightly wider range of hands. So obviously this hand doesn't have an elf. But we have Oath to potentially find an elf. So we're on the draw, so we get our draw step and then 3 looks on this, plus our second draw step, so we get 5 looks at an elf in order to play a turn 3 Karn, which I think is good enough. So while a hand doesn't have mana acceleration, we get 5 looks at an elf. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this and put back the second castle. Yeah, I've dabbled in a bit of Deathclock before. Didn't see the dump yet, but cool, made the list. Nice Killer Charm. And then I believe our opponent mulliganed to 5 as well. Alright, so they have a Sanctum. And no Grazer. Jura's second Oath, not the best. So we'll go ahead and cast our Oath again. We're just looking for Llanowar Elves at this point. We did hit, so unfortunately it had been 2 Planeswalkers, but again, those aren't really the cards that are important in this matchup anyways. They play a Blast Zone and a Strategic Planning. My guess would be looking for Lotus Field or potentially a draw spell if they already have the Lotus Fields. Alright, so we'll go ahead and cast our Oath first. Ideally, we're probably looking for either maybe a backup Karn. Nykthos is fine here too. I believe Nykthos is probably better than taking a second elf. So we'll take the Nykthos. It's better with the Vivian and potentially the Nissa if we can get to that stage of the game. So we'll go ahead and cast our Mystic. Spend 2 weeks in quarantine in a 5-star hotel. Good luck with that, Killager. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Connor, for sure. All right, so they have a Grazer. Alright, so they put in Lotus Field, they go ahead and sack 2 lands, so they're going to keep the stage in the Lotus Field. Alright, so a couple of options here. So it's a little awkward, you know, our spot here. Obviously we have Karn, and that's good. That's step 1. The issue with playing Karn and minusing for, let's say, Damping Sphere, because we have a Damping Sphere in our sideboard. That's the card that we want to get the most, because it turns off their Lotus Field, and basically they can't really combo off through it. So we can play Karn this turn. We can minus and get a Damping Sphere and say go. The issue with that is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe their deck has 4 Dig Through Times. So they could easily just have a Dig Through Time in their hand and, you know, essentially just tap the Lotus Field, cast the Dig Through Time, maybe find a Hidden Strings, and we'll say a Fae of Wishes, play a land, tap the stage in the land, untap the field and the other land, and then 4 mana for Fae of Wishes to go get an answer to Damping Sphere. So I think what I want to do is I want to cut them off as much as I can this turn. And what that entails is getting Tormod's Crypt to at least try and cut them off of casting a Dig Through Time this turn. The problem with that is then I don't get to minus Karn for a God Pharaoh statue 2 turns from now, right? Because I'm going to play Karn, minus get crypt them. They're hopefully not going to kill me, because if they do that, then there's nothing I can do about that anyways. And then I'm going to minus for a Damping Sphere. But if they just have a Fae of Wishes in their hand, they're going to cast Fae, get a Wilt. We're going to minus Karn, get a Damping Sphere. Then they're going to be able to kill the Damping Sphere, and then we're not going to be able to Karn for statue the turn after. So that's certainly the risk in getting a Crypt here. It's really hard to say exactly whether or not they have a Dig Through Time in their hand or not. I mean, they mulligan to 5, but we don't really have any information on what the cards in their hand is. So I think I'm just going to give myself the most chances to not die next turn, and I think that involves getting Tormod's Crypt here. So we're going to do that. Thank you, Durset. I appreciate that. Of course you would, Magus. Alright, so I went a little fast there. They untapped. They're tapping Lotus Fields. Cycling Vizier, floating a mana. And they're going to cast Pour Over the Pages. So it's draw 3, discard a card, untap 2 lands. Discarded a Thespian Stage, worth noting. And they're going to cast Granted, which lets them search their sideboard for a non-creature... Just non-creature, right? Non-creature card. So they did indeed get a Wilt, knowing that I'm going to Karn for Damping Sphere. Yeah, I agree with that, Connor, for sure. Unclear, Crater. Right, yeah. Yeah, Connor, there's a chance that I get punished by not having access to the God Pharaoh's gift 2 turns from the road. But if you have Dig Through Time, you know, I want to make sure I get to untap with this and actually put a Damping Sphere into play. So this turn, pretty easy. We're just going to cast Nissa, untap a land, attack for 3, minus get the Sphere, post-combat, cast the Damping Sphere. Can't really do anything with the Vivian because we don't have any Devotion yet. But once we get to, once we get to untap next turn, we can do some more stuff with Vivian, but... not that I'm aware of, Killagerm. Oh, yeah, right, no, there is, because Standard and Pioneer already happened, so what is there? Modern, Legacy, Vintage... Do they have Pauper, too? I don't think they do. Oh, Limited, right, yep. Alright, so we'll get our Sphere... Tap the Forest for that. Pretty standard stuff. I think they went to cast the Wilt. I believe they played a second field. Yep, they did. And so now we're kind of in an awkward spot. We have a Karn on 1. We can pressure them a little bit. Like, hypothetically, we can go animate a land, attack for 7. We can attack for 9, put them to 11. But we're not disrupting them at all, so there's, I mean, they only have 2 cards, but now they have 7 cards in their graveyard, so they could very easily just have another Dig Through Time, and it's not that hard for them to kill us from this spot if their hand is just Dig Through Time. Is there any benefit in one or the other? I guess the line that you took puts more cards in your graveyard, right? So it potentially makes Dig Through Time better? Does that make a difference? So, yeah, I mean, hypothetically, with the cards that we have in our hand, we could just, animate a 3/3, put 2 counters, then we have 9 plus the additional 2 next turn. So we have 9 plus 11, so we theoretically have a 2-turn clock. But not necessarily even the case, because even if they have nothing, they can just play a 1/4 to block, so they're going to get another draw step regardless, just with what's on board. So we kind of need a good draw step, and we drew best possible, because this can just go get a statue and lock him out. Yeah, I drew the card. I got very fortunate this game. 3, so that would be 4, 8, 9, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. The next turn we minus Viv. Oh yeah, so it would still be 12, right? Because we would go 3, 6. These would be 4, 4. So it's 9 this turn. And then next turn, if they have Fae, nothing else, we just minus Viv, kill the Fae, plus Nissa, attack for 12, right? By not casting Fae. Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if it would have changed all that much, given that I drew the Karn, but yeah, the Fae was probably a free roll there. How much does MTGO whitelist cost? Unclear. Can you cast Vivian, then untap Nykthos? What do you mean, Dos Equis? Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and attack for 9. Go to 11, and then post-combat we'll get our... well, plus our Karn, which didn't matter, but... We'll make some mana, we'll cast the Karn, keep the new one, we'll get our statue, and that should just about do it. This is the new boat. Alright, and that'll do it for game 1. Yeah, I'm not sure how much would have changed if you had played the Fae that turn. Things probably are a little bit different if I don't have this and you play the Fae, but I think I like your line too of playing the second field instead of copying, because I think it makes your dig through time better, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really just about... It's 2 ships passing in the night, basically. Yes, for sure. Alright, game 2 on the draw. Obviously can't keep this hand. Doesn't do anything. I believe... I can't pull up game log, but I'm pretty sure... I want to say Connor kept 7 this game. First, but I don't think I was playing against players who knew enough about the matchup to mold the card. That could be too. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, this hand, this hand's certainly a keep. I have a bunch of fast mana and a Karn. To my knowledge, they don't have any like one or outside of Blast Zone, obviously, but Blast Zone would be too slow to kill the Mystic at this particular hand. I don't think they have any ways to interact with Mystic. So a Mystic should be good to go. So we're definitely going to keep this hand. I believe I put back Vivian, if I remember correctly. I think I just wanted all my mana, and I wanted the Oath because the Oath gave me a shot at finding more lands, and I didn't really want the Vivian. Like, I don't think Vivian's very good in this hand. Alright, Connor mold the 6 this game. Alright, with your Burning Tree, not the best, but if we find a Nykthos, it's also quite good. Alright, Temple. I can't pull up the game log, so I can't remember if we topped or bottomed. Your Castle, so we can go Burning Tree, Haven, Haven, and that sets us up for 6 mana next turn, assuming we draw a land. Because this is 5 right now, so then if we draw a land, we can just Karn minus get Sphere. We can't Haven Oath, so, you know, there's really no way for us to do this, to cast the Oath as well as both Havens, so I'd rather just give myself the shot of, if I draw a land, great. If not, maybe I Oath into a Nykthos, and I still have enough mana to Karn plus Sphere. Alright, so they scrying for, I want to say, yeah, Blast Zone. Play the Lotus Fields. And then, as you'll see in just a second, we are very whitelisted and we drew the land. So we'll go ahead and Karn, get the Sphere. And then, yeah, we're going to get Sphere this turn, attack for 2. They can't cast anything, and then next turn we're going to get the statue. So I feel like from this position, I don't know if there's any outs at this point. I'm sure maybe there might be a string of draws, but it seems unlikely. Yeah. Right, yeah. Alright, so they're going to tick up the Blast Zone, I think, which gives them an answer to the Damping Sphere, but again, they're just, you know, we have a 2-turn clock here. You have the Nissa, which we might as well cast, put a little bit more pressure on. I don't think it's going to end up mattering regardless, but animate the statue, go ahead and crash for 11, and they go to 2 after the statue trigger. And they go ahead and crack Blast Zone. Go ahead and untap. Activate our cards. Go ahead and attack. And that'll be that. For those of you on YouTube, thank you for watching. I hope that was some helpful insight into the gameplay and, you know, how I approach mulligan decisions in certain matchups. You know, this is, again, content that I don't usually do. It's a little bit different than my normal stuff. So if you want to go ahead and throw me a comment in this comment section below, let me know what you think of the video. And I'll see you guys next time.